Why do you think English people know so little about Ireland?
Ignorance is built into our culture. Always from the start of time, from they fucking started taking over every country in the world, they refused to learn their history and refused to come to terms with it. That's the difference between Germany. After the World War, they learned everything about the fucking World War, and now they've come to terms to the fact that, all right, the Nazis were a thing. The best thing we can do is acknowledge it and get over it. Whereas the Brits just want to just hide their past because they'd feel too guilty.
The attitude displayed by the boys you just saw is unfortunately fairly typical in Ireland. At first glance, they seem to be patriotic Irish lads, wearing the flag and making jokes about other countries. However, these guys, like much of what has laughably been called Irish nationalism, are simply anti-English and not pro-Irish at all. It's the same with the Scots. The anti-Englishness displayed in that video fulfills a purely political objective. Its producers are globalists who, by using the faux cheeky bravado of these boys and their wafer-thin patriotism, are pushing the lie that the thousands of third world migrants coming to Ireland every year are every bit as Irish as anyone else in Ireland. As long as the Irish people keep focusing on hating the English, they will not notice that they are losing everything their people built over generations to third world migrants who are only there to grab as much as they can. These so-called civic nationalists, or should I say civic globalists, have no interest in securing a future for the Irish people. Quite the opposite. And if the figures are anything to go by, the future of the Irish is something to be deeply concerned about, as it is with most Western peoples today. And yet these people, seemingly blind to the bigger issue of globalist invasion, exist in every Western nation, not just Ireland. I've noticed that infighting between the peoples of the West is a feature of nationalism that frequently rears its ugly head. It only weakens our cause, and I believe it is designed to do so. The infighting is based on historical enmities stretching back hundreds of years, of which many find it hard to let go, even when faced with the unprecedented threat of mass globalist migration. I ask you, how bad does it have to get before ordinary people start to understand what the real threat is? A Russian friend of mine recently told me a story that made me think about the reality of different white ethnicities and the diversity mindset. She worked in an office in Sweden for a large corporation, and one lunchtime she was sitting with her other Russian friend in the office canteen. They were having a nice lunch and a cozy chat together, in Russian, in the way that Russians do. Then, into the canteen came a Swedish colleague with her food. This woman was immediately presented with a choice. There were two groups she could choose to sit with, the two Russians happily chatting away, or the larger table of her fellow Swedes who were happily sat talking in Swedish in the way only Swedes do. The woman stood there for a moment, deciding where she should sit, her eyes flitting from side to side. Would she sit with her own people and turn her back on diversity? No, she chose to sit with the Russians. And here is where we come to the real point of the story. When she sat down with the Russians, the previously happy, flowing and relaxed conversation became stilted and awkward. The third wheel had arrived. Now you might think she decided to sit with the Russians to stop them feeling excluded, but the Russians were happily chatting away in their own language. So I suspect it had more to do with her wanting to be seen as a good person, as accepting of diversity, and not really caring how she achieved it. The Russians could no longer enjoy this little time speaking in their own language, and the third wheel was missing out on a conversation with her fellow Swedes she would no doubt have enjoyed considerably more. But because of her diversity training, she wrongly thought she was doing the right thing. These divisions, even between whites, are natural. and only the unnatural leftist way of viewing the world creates this sort of unnecessary conflict. No one actually likes diversity. We're all just expected to, and so we pretend. No one wants to have to watch every word they say for fear of causing offence or even losing their job. No one wants to have to sit with people out of a sense of obligation or self-righteousness. We all tend to get along best with people who are more similar to us, people we can relate to and with whom we can communicate naturally. And this applies both to different white ethnicities as well as different races. It's nature's way, and there's nothing anyone should want to change about it, except the social engineers, of course. That said, while all our nations should love themselves and take pride in their people and culture, there is also a danger that we become too focused on our national identity at the expense of our wider identity as part of the West. In this dire situation in which all white people find themselves right now, it's about striking the right balance between what unites us and what makes us unique. As I've always maintained, we are a family of nations that are fundamentally different to all other races on the planet. Of course, it generally doesn't work if many members of the family live in the same house, but that doesn't make family any less important. The crucial thing is to not let these historical enmities allow us to be divided and ruled, because we cannot combat this monstrous threat as isolated units. Our family of nations must rise and act in concert if we are to survive. Yes, it's true that the peoples of European descent share a long history of conflict. We can go into the rights and wrongs of that, how the people were victims of their self-interested elites, and how we are still victims of those same self-interested elites today. But I prefer to focus on our glorious common history of leading the world for centuries in all fields of human endeavour. Our people are truly a unique gift to the world. You may remember in the video at the start that the Irish lads were applauding the Germans' national guilt for their history. They thought it was a good thing that Germany had opened its borders to the Third World because of it, that they should live in a permanent state of paralysing self-hatred. The globalists think that all white nations should think like this, focusing obsessively on the dark patches of their past to ensure they do not have a future, existing only to serve the interests of the endless influx of non-whites. Globalism is a truly hateful doctrine, and through its continual repression of white people, it seeks to deprive the world of the unmatched gifts we have to offer. This all reminds me of a wonderful video I saw a few days ago. This is footage shot in 1902 in Wuppertal, Germany. The footage has been restored and colorized. This is what Europeans were doing 120 years ago. Still looks impressive today, doesn't it? 1902, when the vast majority of people on this planet could scarcely imagine a multi-story building, this is what we were doing. What a grand feat of engineering this is. And this is just a drop in the ocean of the innovation and energy that was exploding across Europe and the wider West at that time. Imagine what wonders the future seemed to promise our people back then. But today, our civilization, instead of going to Mars, is hanging in the balance because of cultural Marxism, multiculturalism, and deliberately engineered racial tension. This is Wuppertal today, overrun with the degradation of Islam and modern liberalism. Diversity has been used against us like a ball and chain, and has stolen from us our ethnically cohesive and ordered societies, shackled to a multicultural society that was purposely designed to fail. Instead of Mars, we got white guilt and burning cities. Instead of fulfilling our wildest dreams, we got stuck in the grinding nightmare of diversity. But here we are, and we have a fight for survival on our hands the like of which none of us have ever known. But we are still those great doers, innovators, and leaders. We still have that blood in our veins, and we can wake up from this nightmare any time we choose. We owe the globalists and these foreign tribes nothing, but we owe our descendants the future that was stolen from us, and it's time we set about building it. Until next time, be well.